I would say, okay, now I want you to build one together, but I don't want you to talk. And so as they start to do that, they look at each other and they look at the vehicle, they're alternating, coordinating, cooperating, right? As they begin to do that, their heartbeats start to come into alignment, which is sort of really miraculous. It works every time.
Welcome to Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. My name is Clayton Platt, and I'll be your host for this podcast journey. And for many people, practicing mindfulness has very little to do with sitting on a cushion, lighting incense, or even focusing on their breath. Just paying attention to what they're doing at any moment, and doing this intentionally, can create that same magic. Our time together is intended to share how mindfulness plays out in everyday life for our guests. And before we begin, here's a word from our sponsor, Meditation for Leadership. We all feel it, the pressure to keep up, to perform, to push through. But lasting success doesn't come from speeding up. It comes from slowing down, leaning in, and creating the space to lead from within. That space is where we shift from autopilot to intention, building mindful habits that strengthen focus and calm. It's where we stay connected to our values and purpose, choosing to respond instead of react. It's where we unlock our potential to positively shape our own lives and empower others to grow and thrive. That's the work of Meditation for Leadership. If you're ready to create the space for sustainable success, visit meditationforleadership.org. Welcome to Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. I'm Clayton Platt. Two strangers, a pile of Legos, no talking. And something happened that the scientists, calling it miraculous, called it that. Not as a figure of speech, but because that's what the data showed. Their hearts found each other. That was Dr. Michael Platt, a neuroscientist at the University of Pennsylvania and a director of the Wharton Neuroscience Initiative. And sadly, no relation. And the phenomenon he's describing, physiological synchrony, the moment two people's bodies actually come into biological alignment, is at the heart of today's episode. Now, before we get to what happens between people, we have to talk about what has to happen inside a person first. I want to ask you something. When did you last feel truly at home in yourself? Not comfortable, not distracted, not productive, but genuinely present, at ease inside your own skin, clear about what matters. For most of us, that's rarer than it should be. We spend enormous energy managing the gap between where we are and where we think we should be. We push, we perform, we optimize, and somewhere in all that, we lose the thread back to ourselves. Today's episode is about finding it again. 3 guests, 3 different doorways into the same truth. A neuroscientist who burned out chasing achievement and found something better on a small island in Germany. A researcher who spent decades studying the mind and realized awareness itself, not just thinking, is what makes us fully human. And Dr. Platt, whose Lego demo you just heard, whose work has revealed something almost astonishing, that when we truly come home to ourselves, our bodies know how to find each other. This is coming home to yourself. So Dr. Vera Ludwig is a psychologist and a neuroscientist at the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center. There she directs the Human Sexuality and Wellbeing Project. Her research on self-regulation without force has reframed how we think about behavior change. And her own journey into that work is the most honest and human story you could ask for. She did her PhD on willpower. She studied what happens in the brain when we exert self-control. And then, quietly, she noticed that the way she was living, pushing from goal to goal, always in a stressful state of forcing, wasn't exactly working. She burned out. And she ended up on a small island in Germany teaching yoga, running workshops, putting up posters all over the island. And something happened there that no amount of willpower had ever produced.
I was pulled into this flow experience that I somehow started to teach yoga there. And then I started to give workshops on neuroscience of behavior change, neuroscience of emotional regulation, figuring out, what is true to you and those sorts of things. And it was just all happening so effortlessly, like in a way that I had never experienced in my academic life.
What Vera discovered on that island was the difference between forcing yourself toward a life and listening your way into one. When she stopped pushing and started paying attention to her body, to what actually lit her up, to what felt true rather than merely strategic, something shifted. The energy came from within. The path became clearer, and she realized this wasn't just her personal experience. It was science waiting to be studied. Her research, developed in collaboration with Judd Brewer and Kirk Warren Brown, showed that when we bring real awareness to our behaviors and their consequences, not judgment, not self-criticism, but genuine, curious attention, the brain actually begins to rewire itself. Old habits lose their grip, not through force, but through presence. Coming home to yourself, it turns out, starts with simply paying attention to how things feel. Your body knows what's working and what isn't. The practice is learning to listen. Vera found her way back through the body, through sensation, through flow, through a felt sense of what is actually true. But what has to be cultivated inside us before we can truly arrive? What is the capacity that makes this kind of listening possible at all? Elizabeth Mackenzie has spent years studying exactly that. She's a certified mindfulness teacher and researcher on the faculty at University of Pennsylvania, whose 2025 peer-reviewed study examined what happens when mindfulness is woven into higher education, not as an add-on, but as part of the fabric of learning itself. And what she found goes far beyond stress reduction.
John Kabat-Zinn has spoken eloquently about all these things, but one sentence that I read recently, he talked about how he said something and I'm paraphrasing here, when people can appreciate that awareness is at least as powerful as cognition, that things change. And that's so interesting to me because education, of course, has focused exclusively on cognition, right? Western education for many generations now, almost exclusively. And we're used to approaching everything with our cognitive minds, right? Cognitive problem solving and so on. But the way he put it, and as I thought about that, is it leaves out of the equation pure awareness, right? And that's actually a big part of being human.
Sit with that for a moment. Awareness is at least as powerful as cognition. We live in a world that prizes thinking, analyzing, problem solving, planning. And these are extraordinary human capacities. I'm not dismissing them for a moment. But Elizabeth is pointing to something we've systematically undervalued: the capacity to simply be aware, to notice, to sense what is actually happening in this moment without immediately rushing to interpret or fix it. And this is what meditation trains. Not the absence of thought, that's a myth, but the ability to observe thought, to notice when we've been pulled away, and then to return, to develop, as Elizabeth puts it, an observing mind. And she found something remarkable in her students. When they learned to sit with their own experience, with the wandering mind, the discomfort, the uncertainty, they became softer with themselves. And when they became softer with themselves, something opened up in how they related to others.
My mindfulness practice is most powerful when I'm able to pause and not say the thing that's burning on my tongue, right?
Yeah.
Not say the thing that maybe I was programmed by my parents to say in that situation. Right? And to choose something different. And often that's just non-doing, not doing anything, which sounds like, oh, that's not powerful, but actually is.
The things we don't say, the reactions we don't have, the space we manage to hold in that half second between stimulus and response, when everything in us wants to fire back. That's not passivity. That's one of the most powerful acts available to us as human beings. The Buddhist tradition has a teaching about this, the second arrow of suffering. The first arrow is whatever hurt us, the criticism, the disappointment, the mistake. The second arrow is what we do to ourselves in response, the self-judgment, the shame spiral, the harsh inner voice that says, you should have known better. Coming home to yourself means learning to put down the second arrow, to meet your own experience, including your failures, your reactivity, your perfectly human imperfections, with something closer to kindness. As Kristin Neff teaches, self-kindness, mindfulness, and a recognition of our common humanity. We are all, as Elizabeth puts it, on the path together. No one is exempt from the wandering mind. Elizabeth shows us awareness as the doorway. Vera shows us what becomes possible when we walk through it. So now let's return to where we began, to those two strangers building with Legos, and to what Michael Platt's research actually reveals about what happens when we fully arrive. Because coming home to yourself isn't just a felt experience. It's a measurable biological signature. And when it happens, when two people are truly present, truly arrived in the same moment, their bodies know it before their minds do. So Dr. Platt is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, where he holds appointments in neuroscience, psychology, and marketing, and directs the Wharton Neuroscience Initiative. He's one of the world's leading researchers on the neuroscience of social connection.
The goal of this demo was to demonstrate this phenomenon of physiological synchrony, which is really I think, a fundamental discovery in the last decade in neuroscience. And it's the observation that when we have a good connection with somebody, when we are connected to them, that our brains actually synchronize. This percolates down to our body, so our hearts start to beat together, we breathe together, we move together. And as it turns out, you can run it in reverse by breathing together, moving together, etc. So what I did in this demo, again, don't try this at home, was to, I brought in a bag of Legos. I got three boys, and dump them on a table, get two people in from the audience up, wire them up, put their heart rates up on the screen. And of course, at rest, their hearts are beating at different times. They're, as you mentioned, they're different body size, different age, different physical fitness. So of course you would expect that. But here's the key. So I would ask them to, without speaking, start to build a vehicle on their own. So they start finding pieces and putting wheels on, and their heartbeats are still, all over the place. And then I would say, okay, now I want you to build one together, but I don't want you to talk. And so as they start to do that, they look at each other and they look at the vehicle, they're alternating, coordinating, cooperating, right? And as they begin to do that, their heartbeats start to come into alignment, which is sort of really miraculous. It works every time.
When two people are truly present with each other, not performing, not distracted, not managing an impression, their heartbeats begin to align. Their breathing synchronizes. Their nervous systems literally come into relationship. This isn't a metaphor. This is biology. And it only happens when both people have arrived, when both people are home. What breaks it is equally telling. Distraction breaks it. Half present breaks it. The glazed over look of someone whose attention is elsewhere, their device, their worry, their next meeting. All of that breaks it immediately. And the body knows the difference between being truly seen and being processed. There's something else worth noting. Vera Ludwig, whose journey you heard earlier in this episode, actually did her postdoctoral work in Michael Platt's lab at Penn. Their research came together precisely at this intersection: self-regulation, connection, and what it means to be present in your own body and in relation with others. These aren't three separate voices that have been speaking here. They're not three independent voices. They're part of a community of thinkers who have shaped each other's understanding. And I find something hopeful in that. Even science, at its best, is built on connection.
None of this works if you've got your nose buried in a phone. Like the prerequisite for the ritual, the prerequisite for connection at a meeting or a dinner is being present, which means not being somewhere else. The infinity of other places you can be when you're staring at a screen.
3 guests, 3 doorways into the same room. Vera discovered that when she stopped forcing and started listening, really listening, to her body, to what felt true, the energy came from within. The path became effortless, not because it was easy, but because it was hers. Elizabeth showed us that awareness, not just thinking, but the quiet capacity to observe and sense and notice, is at least as powerful as anything our analytical minds can produce. And that coming home to yourself is often less about what you do and more about what you choose not to do. The second arrow you put down, the reactive word you don't say, the space you hold, just long enough to choose. And Michael showed us that when we arrive, when we are genuinely fully present, our bodies reach toward each other, heartbeats align, nervous systems settle. Connection happens not because we tried harder, but because we got out of the way. Remember those 2 strangers at the start of our episode. No conversation, no introduction, just attention, shared, honest, and present. Their hearts found each other. That's not a lab result. That's a reminder of what we're capable of when we come home to ourselves first. Coming home to yourself is not a destination. It's not something you achieve once and possess forever. It's a practice, a returning, a moment-to-moment choice to pay attention to what is actually true in your body, in your experience, in the person in front of you. And apparently, we're built for this. I want to invite you to go back and listen to the full conversations with Dr. Vera Ludwig, Elizabeth McKenzie, and Dr. Michael Platt. Each of them went far deeper than what we touched today, and each of them has something in it that may be exactly what you need right now. You can find Magic in the Moment wherever you listen to podcasts, and if something in these conversations has landed for you, I would genuinely be grateful if you leave a rating or a review. It helps other people find the show. It helps these voices reach further. So until next time, this is Clayton Platt reminding you to look for those moments of magic in your life where mindfulness shows up in real time.